Okay. Good morning, everyone. The power of thoughts. Thoughts are powerful, right? That's kind of something that we know by now. Uh, when we talk about thoughts and their influence on our lives, usually we want to see some sort of proof of it. And that would have to come from science. And they can't do that yet. But we can get to a midterm and explain, I think, enough that it will justify this affirmation. Thoughts are very powerful. There are two ways of, or two, I could say two groups of people, or we can divide in two groups, how people think about how thought is formed, where it starts. One group believes it's in the brain, the physical part of our brain over here inside the head. The other group thinks they start in the mind. But defining the mind itself is already complicated, because even this group here, they will define mind as several different things. So it's very lacky, it's very complicated. For the people who believe its origin is in the brain, it's well determined. It's here, inside the head. This is very volatile. For the people who believe the origin is in the brain, we could ask them, where in the brain does it start? In the front, in the back, on the top, on the left, on the right? If they're saying it starts in there and it's a physical piece of matter, we should be able to determine where it starts. But we can't tell that. From scientific standards, we should also have two other questions. Where is it made of? I mean, you're telling me it starts in this physical piece here, this volume of cells and whatever we call the brain. And also, what's its speed of propagation? Those are scientific questions for the people in science who believe it's generated in the brain, and they don't have any of the three answers. So it's like an affirmation without support. They just think it is, and they assume it is. Of course, there are several different studies about it, but we haven't got anywhere yet from that point of view. Now, the people who believe it's generated in the mind, we could ask almost the same questions. How is it formed? What is the mind for you? What does it mean exactly? And the same two other questions. What is it made of? And what's the speed of propagation? And there are no answers for this. They can't answer. The people who believe in this can't answer these questions. The people who believe in this cannot answer these questions either. So, for us, Spiritists, let's try to knock at least one of them out. So we eliminate 50% of the possibilities. We could just ask ourselves this. Do discarnate spirits think? What do you think? Do they think or not? If they think, I eliminated this altogether. So 50% of it is out. That makes it very easy, per se. Right? 50%, that's it. If discarnate spirits can think, it has to have some relation to this. Whatever mind is, we haven't got to that yet, but it can't be on that side. It doesn't make any sense. Okay? Alright, so for us to start dealing with this, meaning it's not physical at all, it does not start in the brain, we're going to bring Spiritist ideas from several different books that will give us a general direction of how to approach. And we're going to use these ideas throughout our hour today here. Thoughts are forces, images, things, and creations which are visible and tangible to the spirit realm. So, nothing physical, no brain, nothing like that. Okay? Thoughts they move subtle forces around us to build landscapes and forms by creating magnetic fields or waves. So something happens when it starts. We haven't got to that yet, but when it starts, when it's formed, it generates waves. That's all we are getting from this right now. So it generates images, and images are propagated through waves. It's like, for example, I'm thinking of a book, so I show you the book. That's what the spirits see when I think. When I think, I project an image of my thought, and it's propagated through waves. That's what we're getting so far. We're going to see how it works and the mechanics behind it, the dynamics behind it. Here's from another book Thought and Life by Emmanuel. Thoughts are creative electromagnetic forces. So we're getting away from something tangible to something completely not tangible, forces. Okay, not something that I touch, not something that I pick, not something that I look at, just forces. Thoughts propagate through subtle waves. So they are propagated through waves. You see, the thought is not the wave. We usually, in different literatures, we will find stuff like this. Thoughts are waves and so and so and so. I mean, we understand in general what the person is trying to say, that they use waves to propagate, but they are not the waves. They use waves to propagate. They are vibrant and active forces whose speed supersedes the speed of light. And that kills science right here, because how can we detect it? How am I going to detect a wave that propagates with the speed above the speed of light? We don't have any instruments. We don't have any way of detecting that, except by looking at the result. For example, we don't detect, by looking here, we don't detect any cellular waves with our eyes. But if I have the right instrument, which is the cell phone, I can tell, oh yeah, there are waves here. So I have to have something that picks up the information and measures. We can't do that because it's above the speed of light. We don't know how to deal with that. Thought is matter, mental matter. And it's of course it's matter not at the level that we are here. It's what we call quintessential matter, which is matter in the spiritual realm level dimension. It's a different type of matter. It's a variation of the planetary fluid. We're going to talk about this a little bit. So when you look at all these things, it does not make any sense to talk about thought comes from the brain or generated in the brain. It's something else. So we are getting like a third avenue here. It's not brain, it's not really mind because it's not well explained. It's something different. It's a force. It's a force. Okay? So coming back to this, we could say that thoughts originate outside the brain. So far, that's a fact. We know that. Even science is not, most of the scientific community doesn't go against this idea. They haven't been able to prove anything, but they're not against the idea. They just haven't got to what they have to get to be sure about it. So if we are going to understand how thoughts are propagated, we need to see how they are generated. So what we are going to do is two people thinking. One person is going to send a thought, and the other person is going to receive. So we are going to represent a person by its 5 subtle bodies. Okay? We've studied this a lot here in the past. So the spirit controls what is called the mental body. The mental body is responsible for the generation of thought, and it's the only thing the mental body does. We are told by André Luiz. Mental body is where thought is generated. When thought is generated, it will come down through the other bodies, spiritual body, etheric double, and it gets to the brain. So when it gets to the brain, it's already formed way in the past. So that's not the origin. Now, here's one person represented by its subtle bodies. Here's another. That person is going to think something. Here's another person also represented by the subtle bodies. When that person thinks, okay, the thoughts are generated through waves. They are propagated, and they will make their own way into here. Okay, where it goes here is not the point today, because we are trying to understand the origin, how it starts in there. So what we know so far is the mental body creates this, what we call thought form, creates this image of the thought. And the waves are used to propagate that to the universe. This person happens to be just part of the universe, but it goes everywhere. It's a wave. Waves go everywhere. Okay, if I turn the radio on, the radio waves are going to fill up the room. It doesn't go to one person and the other right by it doesn't hear. No, it's a wave, so it propagates throughout. So it's the same thing here. The thoughts will propagate throughout. Now, here's another person, but this person happens to be discarnated. So they don't have the etheric double and they don't have the physical body. When we think, okay, same thing, exactly the same thing happens. This person, represented by its discarnated subtle bodies, will receive the thought the same way somebody who is incarnated will. So the waves and the information transmitted does not depend on which dimension you are. It's a wave that is multidimensional. When I think of something, it will affect you. You might not feel the impact right away. We're not at that level yet. But you will affect everybody or all the spirits that are discarnated. It's a lot more impact than we can initially thought or think. Now, there's another problem. When we think, doesn't it go to the brain? Don't we have the brain biologically controlling everything? We do. So the thought generates here and the waves will propagate it. But part of this comes to our brain and it's going to be processed. It's going to be processed. So there's a residue here, which I'm going to explain how it works. You see, the thought will get to my brain way after it was generated. First, it goes out as waves to the universe, and then it comes into my mind. So I will feel the impact of it, but everybody will as well. It's going to be a lot harder on me, or a lot more impactant on me, because my brain is connected to my mental body. But it will impact me. So if it's something good that I'm thinking, it will impact me positively. If I'm thinking of something bad, my biology will act accordingly, regardless if it's something good or bad that I'm thinking. Biology, the neurochemistry in the body will follow that thought all the time. And this is very dynamic. It never stops. Okay? So if we sustain bad thoughts, for example, our body is going to absorb that all the time. It's going to pay for it. There's going to be a price. If I can sustain good thoughts only, my body's going to have a very good time, per se. So part of it comes to our brain, and we are going to study and see what happens exactly here. So let's say I'm thinking that I'm going to go to the garden. I'm going to do some work in the garden. Okay? So when I think of that, before I actually go to the garden, I'm thinking, right? I haven't got to the garden yet. I'm thinking, oh yeah, let me go outside because I'm going to do some work in the garden. When I thought, the waves are out. The waves are out. So all the discarnate spirits are thinking, are seeing or feeling what I'm thinking. Now, it could be like this. I'm going to work in the garden because my plants are so beautiful. I want to keep them going and so and so and so. I want to see them grow. Or I can go to the garden and say, oh my God, I'm going to have to go to the sun again to work on these plants and these flowers. You see, the energy associated, the sentiment associated is one thing, but the propagation happens regardless. So the thought form, when I think about it, the thought form is generated. This thought is going to be more or less impactant based on two things. My willingness and for how long I can sustain that, longevity. The harder I put on my thoughts, the more concentration I put on it will impact more or less others and me. So if I sustain, for example, and that's a common thing that we hear all about, I'm sure we know somebody in those conditions. Some people sustain, for example, rage or revenge against somebody for 50 years, 60 years. Can you imagine what this is doing? The longevity of this thought and the willingness to have that happen will have a disastrous impact on my body. We're going to see that. Okay. All right, so once this is formed, the thought form is out there, then it's going to be propagated. Again, through waves. The waves are going to generate this. There are two types of waves that can be generated: short waves and long waves. Short waves are linked to good things, unconditional love, things like this. So in here, short waves are generated when I'm thinking something like this: compassion, charity, tolerance, and so and so and so. Every time my thought carries these things, the waves that it generates are short. Why does it matter, short waves or long waves? Short waves are much more powerful and impactant. They propagate longer, further, and with more impact. Okay? Now, if my thoughts are not very good, they will generate long waves. Usually these are associated with material things, vices, things like this: selfishness, greed, and luxury, and all of those, intolerance, impatience, all of these things, they generate long waves. Long waves will make me, because it goes to my brain, it makes me feel more than others because they don't go very far away. They stay in the area that I am. It's like I'm a focus generating waves. If they don't go very far, they stay in the area around me all the time. You see, I don't dissipate that. Long waves don't dissipate, don't go too far, they stay around me. Short waves do, because their power of propagation and penetration is much bigger. So that's why if we're on this side here, if we are generating long waves, we feel worse all the time. We feel, not good things. We feel the same things that we are thinking all the time. It becomes what we call the snowball, because it never leaves me. I'm always in it. I'm always inside that little castle. Okay? Now, one thing is, thought is generated. It's a force. It's going to be generated by modifying the planetary fluid. The spirit will modify the planetary fluid to generate the force and to be propagated. Now, in science, when we say modify some type of energy, so there's a planetary fluid that I'm going to modify to do something else, that is a change in energy. The energy was on this form, now it's on that form. Every time we change energy, we manipulate energy, there's a residue. Every time. Every time. For example, there's not 100% anything good. A heater, an air conditioning, anything that transforms energy generates something that we call a byproduct. When we generate thoughts, it creates a byproduct, because I have one form of energy called planetary fluid, and I generate another one called thought. And there's a byproduct. The byproduct could be something good or bad, depends on what I'm thinking. And this byproduct, which is at the mental body level, has to cross all the other bodies to make its way into the brain. So you will cross the spiritual body, you will cross the etheric double to make its way into the brain. So what the brain is processing is a byproduct of my thought. It's not the thought, it's a byproduct. I'm thinking good, the brain is going to generate good neurochemistry in the body. I'm thinking bad, the brain is going to generate bad neurochemistry in the body. You will follow what the thought is. You will act accordingly. The brain is nothing more than an instrument that registers the thought. That's it. You register the thought. Oh, you're thinking this? Okay, so here's what I got to do. This is going to be my chemistry for the time being, or for today, or for tomorrow. And it becomes your regular chemistry if you're sustaining that for years and years and years and years. So if you're thinking good all the time, if positive all the time, your body, your brain will make the body sustain that goodness all the time. So you're always feeling good. Okay? You can see people like Divaldo Franco here, and Mother Teresa and Gandhi. These Mother Teresa and Gandhi, they were like fragile people and never got sick. Never got sick. All right? Okay, so when we then try to start and understand how the brain generates this thing, we need to go back a little bit. The brain that we have today, it's consequence of an evolutionary process that starts way in the back, way back. The first type of brain that we had in history is what we call reptilian brain. We still have it. Our brain has 3 levels: reptilian, paleomammalian, and neomammalian. Okay? Reptilian is the very basic level. You can tell by the word reptile. What is that? That's our brain that reacts as an animal. That's the animal in us. So somebody comes to talk to me and I do like this. That's just animal. I'm not thinking. That's just the animal reacting. Okay, and I can, sometimes we are so enraged with some situation, something that we don't think of anything else. We look like an animal. People looking from outside and looking at the scene, oh, that person looks like an animal. It's acting like an animal. Yes, it is, because I'm reporting from here. Now, then later on, we have our brain. Our evolutionary path took us to another type of brain, more advanced. You see, it doesn't replace the first. It adds to it. A second layer, it's called paleomammalian, and then a third layer called neomammalian. That's where we are today. So for every situation that we have, I can think as using my neomammalian brain or my reptile brain. And the result's going to be different. Okay? Now, in line with this, Andre Luis tells us about the mental realm. Okay? He reports this in this book here, In the Greater World. It's a great book. There are 2 chapters here, chapters 3 and 4, where he studies the brain at length. Okay? That's where most of this stuff comes from. Now, in line with this reptilian brain comes with what he calls primitive brain. Science has other names. Cortex nervous systems, basal ganglia, those are scientific names for the same thing. In here, he uses the name primitive brain. The primitive brain is the animal in us. Second phase is what he calls the intermediate zone. Science calls neocortex and motor cortex and a few other names. And then at the third level, the most advanced level, is what we call the frontal lobes. Okay? So, if we are reacting to a situation as an animal, okay, so to speak, I'm not using my frontal lobes. I'm not using this. And I should, because that's what makes me different from the animals. See, every time I use these 2 brains here, okay, I'm better than an animal. But it's not too hard to see us, any of us, because of the level that we are using this. Okay? Now, if we think about the energy level following this, here at this level is instinct. That's what the animal does, instinct. It acts by instinct. It doesn't think. It doesn't put a strategy to situations. Let's do this. No, there's no such a thing. It's instinct. Okay? The lion is coming, I gotta run. That's it. At the second level, the energy is the energy of today. What's happening today? The present moment. What am I doing? What I have to do? I have to work today. I have to do this and that. It's not anything out of the ordinary. It's just to get us going, get the body going. That's what this is. And at the third level, in line with the frontal lobes, that's where the sublime components come in. Charity, tolerance, patience, because we need a thinking process for that. Because charity, for example, it's all fragmented in our bodies, in our lives. We can do charity, yes we can, but for 5 minutes. No longer than that. Then we stop. We go back to our lives. Maybe next month, another 5 minutes. It's all fragmented. I can't keep this forever. So, but when I do, I'm using my frontal lobes. Okay? Another way of seeing this is that at the person itself, each individual, in here, what this does is automatic impulses, which is similar to instinct. Okay? I react by instinct in several different situations. All of us do. In here, the energy level at this individual level is what I have today, my conquers today. I was able to do this. That's where I am today. I came from this, and today I'm here. That's the personal, individual evaluation of where I am. Here at the top level are my objectives. I can't set objectives if I don't have a frontal lobe. Monkeys can't do that. Lions can't do that. Giraffes can't do that because they don't have these brains. They have this. They can't put a strategy, an objective. I can see, well, next year I want to go and, I want to visit Paris. Okay, that's an objective. It doesn't mean that's going to happen, but there's a purpose, there's an objective in there. Now, what is the focus of each one of these things? Here is habit, automated, everything automated. Automated to the level of, for example, to digest food, I don't need to concentrate, it just happens, right? For the heart to beat, I don't have to stop. You beat it, go, now stop, beat it. I don't have to concentrate, I don't have to do that. It just happens. At the second level, when I use this brain, it has to do with, it's associated with effort and willingness. I want to do something. You see, this is the present moment, right? This is the present moment, current conquers. I want to do this. Okay? Now, at the top level, those are my goals, my ideals. And it requires creativity because you can't create goals if you're not creative. You are creating new goals. You are creating new ideals. It requires the ability to create something. So creativity is here. We're not going to find creativity here. Okay? That means when somebody comes to talk to me and I go, I stopped thinking. I can't be creative. I can only be an animal for the time that I decided to. And then at a certain point I go, okay, it passed. Okay, what happened here? Then I'm going to think, then I'm going to go back here. But during this time, when I'm reacting as an animal, acting as an animal, I can't think. I can't put a strategy. I can't think. I can only be a plain bare animal. Okay? At the mental level, this is subconscious, this is conscious, and this is superconscious. That's what psychologists see, how they see. And time-wise, that's maybe the most interesting thing. You see, when I'm here, I'm looking at the past. Everything here already happened. For example, going back to the same example, somebody comes to talk to me and I go, I've been doing this for billion of years. That's in the past. I'm reacting as a past event. The same way I did last year, the same way I did last life, the same way I did 2 million years ago. I'm living in the past when I do this. Here, I'm living in the present. Oh, okay, let me try to do this. Let me think about this. I'm here today. I'm living in the present. And here, I'm living in the future. I'm going to put objectives. They haven't happened yet. They will happen, hopefully. I'm going to put an ideal. I want to do this and this. It hasn't happened yet. That's in the future. I want to create this thing. It hasn't been created yet. It's in the future. So when we are here, we do not mirror a future for ourselves. We can't create anything. When we are, bringing up things as rage, revenge, and intolerance and impatience, during those moments that we are practicing these vices, we cannot go ahead. We just stopped. We're not living in the present, not even in the future. I can only propose something for myself in terms of future if I get away from this level. I have to use my frontal lobe. And that's an interesting thing, because when you look at this, it kind of becomes very serious, right? Why sometimes I lost my creativity, because in those moments I'm thinking in the past for some reason, whatever it is, and it happens to all of us, right? When am I going to be more creative? When I get away from this as much as I can. Now, in this book, In the Greater World, he is going to say this, which makes a lot of sense. You can never ever live just here. because still we have a neocortex. There's always going to be, for even if I'm the worst person in terms of living here, there will be certain times when I'm creative and do a little bit more. We cannot live 100% of the time here because we have a reptilian brain that reacts to instinct. If I were 100% here, I wouldn't digest food. My heart wouldn't beat. So you can never live full-time here, full-time here. The best thing, that's what it says, André Luiz, the best thing is to live here, to acknowledge what we have conquered, to acknowledge what we have done and it's not right, or it should be changed, and project a future based on that. Today, projecting the future is a current action. The future has not happened yet. That's what he's telling us. We have to, the more we're concentrating here, the more of a better life we're going to have, better incarnated life we're going to have, this life, present moment. That's very interesting. That's very in line with a lot of different inputs from different people in different belief systems. Here's one of them. I think everybody knows this book, right? Even if you haven't read, it's so famous, so popular that I'm sure you have seen this. Eckhart Tolle, right? The Power of Now. And there's one phrase that summarizes a lot of what he's trying to say or to tell us in the book. We spend most of our lives thinking about the past. Translation. We spend most of the time using the reptilian brain. Okay? And wondering how our future can be different from it. Wondering how the future can be different. So difficult to project something different. That's what he's saying. It's hard for us to create a future that's different from the past. It's hard to use the frontal lobe to create something different than the instinct. That's what he's saying. It's challenging. It is. Yes, it is. In the meantime, we forget the present moment. The present moment is when I project my future. When I analyze my reptilian brain and say, that's certain things here are good, certain are not, and we're going to project. That's the present moment. In the meantime, we forget the present moment, postpone our achievements. Why would I postpone achievements? Because in order to postpone achievements, I have to be creative and use my frontal lobe. My next achievement is going to be this. But if I'm living in the past, that can't be done. If I'm, attached to something that happened in my past, I cannot project the future. Postpone our achievements to a distant day and create dreams that will make us happy. See, making us happy requires creativity and projection to the future, an objective, a goal. But if I'm not creative, if I'm attached to my past, living in my things in the past, I can't do that. Because the brain doesn't know how to do that. To change our lives, we need to start now. That's totally in line with that table that we saw, and it's totally in line with what André Luiz is telling us here. If you haven't read this book, it's kind of a must for us to understand how to achieve happiness. It has to be projected first. But I can't project happiness if, this guy did this thing to me 50 years ago. There's no happiness automatically. Okay? Now, let me show you something else here. Very interesting. This book here, Ellen Langer, Mindfulness. She has one of the most important studies about aging in this planet. The study was conducted in the mid-80s, early 80s, okay, so it's time 30, 40 years ago. And from a young age, she was always interested in always challenged by the fact that people age from a young age. So she decided to study that, and she became almost like considered an expert in aging today. In the 80s, she decided to do an experiment. This is the experiment. She would take a certain place, and there was an abandoned monastery just outside Boston. So she rented the place. It was abandoned. So everything had to be, she had to allocate a bunch of resources and people to be able to do this thing. So they cleaned up the whole place, made it all beautiful and decorated the interiors and the exteriors in the 50s. Okay, so the whole decoration, the environment outside, the painting of the building, the style, is all 1950. And she had volunteers, 2 groups of volunteers, all of them between 75 and 80 years old. In 1980, okay? So she said to these people, you're going to live for 1 week in the 50s, when you were 50. Okay? So 25 people are going to live in 1950, in their 50s, and same here, another group, same thing. This group is told all the decorations and everything is in the 50s, you're going to feel familiar and so, but just keep living your life and whatever. This group here received the following task. You're going to be in a place that's not simulating the 50s. You're going to be in the 50s. You're going to relive 5 days of your life in 1950. They had television exactly like in the 50s. They were showing movies from the time. The news that they had were news from those days, not from today. Nothing, absolutely nothing, not even a single piece of something visual resembled 1980. It was all 1950. Okay, so one group is told, just go there and live for a week. This group is, you are living in 1950. Don't even make a thought that you are in the 80s. Okay, so before they start, they took all the biometric, measurements and everything, blood tests with enzymes and hormones to a full-blown level of detail. When the experiment ended, 1 week after, they measured this group that was just told, just go there and live. No change. If you compared the 2 exams, they were about the same. No change, nothing significant. In this group here, they reversed aging in terms of medical hormones, exams, and everything else. Their levels of hormones and biometric, everything was as if they were 25 years younger. Then you go like, that's a major thing. Today is no big deal that the environment matters, but that's the experiment that triggered the whole thing about it. So the environment matters, but it's not only the environment, because these people were in the same environment. It's the environment and how you think you should age. So the conclusion of this work is this. This is a text from the book in the conclusion. Regular and irreversible cycles of aging that we witness in the later stages of human life may be a product of certain assumptions about how one is supposed to grow old. Okay, let's stop for a little bit. Here I am in the present. When I read this, how am I supposed to grow old? Is this a projection or a reading from the past? It's a reading from the past. It has been this way. It will continue to be that way. Do you understand what's happening here? So we are pulling stuff from our past and copying and pasting to the future. We're not projecting anything. We're not putting any new goals, objectives, no creativity. I'm picking up this and this into this. So this is very powerful because this is a proven experiment. It's one of the most important experiments regarding age that we still have today, and that was in the 80s. If we didn't feel compelled to carry out these limiting mindsets, so we feel compelled. Why? Because I'm looking to the past. If I didn't feel compelled, we might have a greater chance of replacing years of decline with years of growth and purpose. So what she's trying to say is scientifically is that we decline because we're looking here. We are supposed to grow old this way. We are supposed to be older this way. So I'm going to be this way. You see, that's the power of thought. It can do this to us. It can, it can, the residues that go to our brains when we think can destroy us, depending on what it is. This is very serious. This book here, when he was out, it made a lot of, I'm not going to say success, but yes, outside her area. He was coming into the scientific community, to religion groups, to churches, because that's amazing information. And for us, Spiritists, that's totally in line with what he's saying. We are looking into our reptilian brain. We are acting and reacting as mostly animals at certain times of our lives, and that is creating this. Every time I react as an animal, I'm doing years of decline. I'm not growing. This is very serious. Okay, so coming back to this thing here, the byproduct, right? The byproduct. That's where the present is. Our present is a byproduct what I'm thinking. My brain takes the residues of this energy and it creates neurochemistry that will follow that. And again, if my thoughts are good, my neurochemistry is good. You can take, my measurements and biometric information and blood tests and everything is going to be good all the time, in balance. When my thoughts are negative and polluted, what happens to the byproduct? That's the pollution. That's a bad residue that's going to trigger my brain to make my entire body a result of that byproduct. My body is a byproduct of my byproduct when I think. So that will explain, and he will explain this on his next books. He will explain that's how diseases are born. All the diseases and troubles and problems, they all become from here. So if we look into the table, if we go back to that table, I mean, it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. But I think it's visually, at least visually, sort of not very difficult to understand what's happening. That our reptilian level, it's a foot on the brake. It does not let us create new things. It does not let us even see the present. Okay? When you are coming back to the same example that we gave, somebody comes to talk to me and I enrage completely. I'm not even seeing what the present is. I can enrage totally, and I cannot even tell that there's people in the room, that there's chairs here, that there's a computer here, there's a monitor here. I cannot even tell. I'm unaware of the present because I'm reacting or acting as an animal. This is very serious. So the more we go into this level, the less we go into this level. How do I get to this level all the time? Vices and material things, as he said in the book. So when I'm attached to vices and material things, I'm a reptile in terms of brain. I can't create anything, I can't do anything. So, for example, here's an example. What is your next goal? Win the lotto. That's a material goal. That's not a creative goal. That's still reptilian because it's matter, it's material. Because when I win that money, if I ever win, right? And when I die, it doesn't cross over. So it's not long term. Every time we are practicing vices and attached to material things, we are undermining our ability to grow, to be creative. Okay? So I really suggest you to, concentrate on this book here. Chapters 3 and 4. He explains in details all of that. All right, thank you very much. Any questions, comments, suggestions?
Good, Louise. Very nice. Yeah, I have a question. When you first went into all of the spiritual mental the Andre Luis series where we read about Andre's various mentors
Uh-huh.
or teachers who have this ability to be telepathic. Okay, and how would you describe such
Ability to tell the past, you say?
to be telepathic in order to
Telepathic.
read the thoughts of
Uh-huh.
Andre?
Okay.
But it seems Andre is not quite able to do that, and maybe later he is.
Yeah, this here that we spoke about is for incarnated spirits, right? That's us with a brain living and doing damage to our brains and bodies. Okay. What you're saying is different because it's not at the physical level. They are all discarnate. So the same basic logic still applies. One thinks and everybody gets it. Okay, there's still propagation of waves and all of that, but there's no. You see, the residue in discarnate spirits cannot be cleared because you need a physical body to clear that. That's how we clear the residue, right? It comes into the brain, becomes neurochemistry, and you go ahead and do it. Discarnate spirits can't do that. It throws down as far as spiritual body. There is no etheric double. There is no physical body. So it's going to stay in the spiritual body. And it's like I give you a hot potato and you can't put anywhere. You have to hold it. You can't put anywhere. So it's a lot more intense and difficult for them than it is for us. And I think Emmanuel is, in regards to that, he will say, for the level that we are, evolutionary level that we are so bad, if you will, that we need a physical body to discharge. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do it. Because discarnate spirits can't discharge. They cannot. We can. So it's kind of a blessing, if you will. It's a necessary evil for us to have the ability to discharge. They don't. It becomes latent. So that's why they go to these, they are in the umbral and dark zones, and so it's very hard to get out from there. Because the energy, there's no way to discharge the energy, the residue. The byproduct.
But there's also a connection, right? Being in sync with that pattern of thinking. So that's why we get it from the discarnate, that telepathic aura. So we have to somehow be in sync.
When you receive their thoughts, you're saying. When you receive their thoughts, yes. If you buy that, yes. You see, I have a radio at home, but I never turn it on to a rock station because I don't like it. But I still have the ability to. I just never do it. You see? So it depends on what you're turning your antennas to. All the waves are in. You see, our cell phones are, let's just say, they are off, turned off. It doesn't mean that nobody's calling us. There are people trying to call us, but we don't get it because it's turned off. So we're not, like you said, in sync with what's coming in.
So this residue you talk about is what keeps us from being telepathic? Would you say?
No. Being or not telepathic, it doesn't have to do with the residue. It has to do with the formation of thoughts only. Not psychic abilities or anything like this. Just the origin and formation of thought, meaning manipulating planetary fluid and generating something out of that. Okay?
What about a prefrontal lobotomy? I know it's a crazy.
No, go ahead.
If you have a prefrontal lobotomy, how does that affect the perispirit, affect the other body?
You see, the residue attaches to the aura. Okay, the residue, when it comes down from the mental body level to the physical body, it has to cross spiritual body and etheric double, and it attaches to it. Okay, for example, if I put my hands on something dirt and I want to throw it towards somebody, I just made my hand dirt. That's the residue. That's my residue. So the residue of bad things, even good things, they go into the spiritual body. That's where the law of action and reaction is. The law of karma, if you will. Cause and effect, everything is in there. So when I try to do this and throw something bad to somebody, it's in there. You threw something bad towards this person, it's there. It pollutes my aura. It attaches to the aura. And then I have to clean up later. The ways to clean up later are several lives, right? And trying to change your thoughts. Those are the easy one, not the easy one, the most visible ones, if you will. It's not easy though. Several lives is one of them. Wash and wash. Sometimes you have the clothes is so dirty that you have to wash 3 times, 4 times to get it out. Right?
Question. You talked about the 3 parts of our, the
Three levels, 3 layers.
3 levels. You will never, as you go into higher spirits, do you get rid of that reptilian, or is that always going to be there with us? Because
While you're incarnating, until the last incarnation that you're going to have here, you're always going to have all 3. Okay? But there's going to be a point, and that will be your last incarnation, that you barely look at it. So you don't need that anymore, because you're now pure spirit. You don't need to look into your polluted pure spirit anymore. It doesn't make any more sense. Can you imagine Jesus saying, "Oh, I did this in the past. Should I do this? Should I do that?" It's not. There's no such a thing. He's all creative.
So that's getting to a very higher.
For you, when you are higher spirit, Jesus and up, okay, you will be able to create planets, create universes, create moons. How can you create that if you have a reptilian brain? You can't. Okay, so it kind of gets detached when you get to a certain level of evolution.
So even though, like right now, we're getting ready to kind of move into the regeneration phase of our growth.
The psychosphere,
it'll
yes.
Still be there.
Still be there. Oh yeah. Still be there, because on your next life, let's say you're perfect on this life, almost perfect, and the last life is going to be proof of it, and that's the last one. On your next life, you're still going to have a stomach that needs reptilian brain to digest food. You still need the muscles to be able to do what they do, reptilian brain. You still need to have bones doing what they do, reptilian brain. You still need it.
For me, I think what I got the most was the short waves and long waves, because that's something that we can exercise. We can practice that.
Yeah.
Little by little.
Meditation is
If
one
I'm thinking
way.
in short waves, and practice more of that, I will not absorb long waves from whatever realm.
Exactly.
Am I right?
Yeah, it makes sense. And another thing, for example, we discussed this in the past year too, but we are masters in suffering. We are PhD in suffering, all of us. PhD in everything that you can possibly imagine. So let's just say, for example, that in this present life, living in the present, okay, I have a condition. Let's just say, I don't know, I have a problem with my junction here, my joint, okay, and it hurts all the time, arthritis, something like that. If I'm living in the past, that's never going to leave me. It's going to be there 24 hours a day, okay. There will be moments, fragmented moments throughout the days that, oh, let me watch this movie. And when the movie is finished, 2 hours later, you go, oh, I forgot, I didn't even feel that. Okay, because you kind of took your attention out of it. It's called density of attention. Okay. Now, if we could use our PhD degrees that we have on certain things, let's just say arthritis. If I can use my PhD degree in arthritis to help people with arthritis, what would happen? I would be there trying to help these people. So while I'm helping them, and I'm qualified to do that because I have a PhD degree on that, while I'm doing that, I'm not feeling my own because of the density of attention. I'm switching from reptilian brain to creativity. Reptilian brain is, oh my God, that's reptilian brain. Okay, oh, these people have the same condition. Oh my God, I passed this. Let me help them. Let me try to give them some information. That's creativity. While I'm doing that, I'm not feeling my own stuff. Oh, you see, this is all in line with what this book is trying to teach us here. Okay? All right.